Bella the bear and her son Cody lived peacefully in a vast forest. A place teeming with life and natural wonders. The dense trees, the flowing streams, and the rich vegetation created an ideal environment for them to thrive. Bella, being the protective mother she was, taught Cody everything he needed to know about surviving in the wild. From tracking prey to recognizing safe food sources, she ensured that her son would grow strong and capable. Every day, they would roam the forest together, Bella always keeping a watchful eye on Cody. She was patient and kind, always taking the time to explain the ways of the forest, though sometimes her lessons were through action rather than words. Cody, with his curious eyes and playful spirit, often asked countless questions, eager to learn everything. Bella loved these moments of teaching. She could see that Cody was growing into a strong and intelligent young bear. The relationship between them was one of deep trust and affection. Bella was Cody's protector, and in turn, Cody admired her strength and wisdom. But like all young ones, Cody had a tendency to wander off when something caught his attention. He would sometimes stray a little too far from Bella, enchanted by the sights and sounds of the forest, only to be gently called back by his mother. One bright morning, after a light rain, they set off for their daily search for food. The air was fresh, and the forest smelled rich with the scent of wet earth and pine. Bella led the way, her large paws making soft imprints in the mud. Cody followed closely behind, his smaller paws struggling to keep up but always eager to learn. As they moved through the forest, Bella noticed Cody becoming increasingly distracted. A colorful butterfly fluttered by, and Cody, in his excitement, darted after it. Bella smiled to herself but kept moving forward, knowing that Cody would quickly realize he had strayed too far. But as the minutes passed, Bella began to notice something strange. There was no sound of Cody's paws behind her. She stopped, her instincts sharpening. The forest, usually full of life and sounds, seemed unnervingly quiet now. Bella called out softly, "Cody!" There was no answer. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned around, scanning the area behind her. There was no sign of him. Panic started to rise within her, but she quickly squashed it, focusing instead on her training and instincts. Bella knew the forest like the back of her paw, but it was large and dense, and sometimes even the most familiar places could seem foreign when one was lost. "Cody," she called again, louder this time, her voice carrying through the trees. But still, no response came. Bella's mind raced as she retraced her steps. She moved quickly, calling out for her son, her voice now tinged with urgency. She stopped at the base of a tall oak, sniffing the ground for any scent that might lead her to him. Her sharp nose picked up a faint trace of his scent, and she began following it. The path led her to a small stream, where the scent disappeared, leaving Bella to wonder if Cody had crossed the water or if he had strayed further still. Every moment felt like an eternity. The forest, which once seemed like a safe haven, now felt like an endless labyrinth. Bella's mind kept replaying the images of her son's face, his wide eyes full of wonder as they ventured into the unknown. She had always promised herself that she would never let anything happen to him. And now, she feared that she had failed. Meanwhile, Cody, completely unaware of the growing distress in his mother's heart, was on his own little adventure. After chasing the butterfly for what felt like hours, he realized that he had wandered far from Bella. The forest looked different here, The trees were denser, and the sounds were unfamiliar. A feeling of unease began to creep in. But Cody tried to shake it off. He was brave, after all, and Bella had always told him that there was nothing to fear in the forest if you were cautious. But as the minutes passed and the sun began to dip lower in the sky, Cody's confidence waned. He tried calling out, but there was no response. He called again, louder this time, but the only sound that greeted him was the rustle of leaves in the wind. His heart began to race. What if he couldn't find Bella? What if she couldn't find him? Tears welled up in his eyes as the forest around him seemed to grow darker. He sat down on a patch of moss, feeling small and vulnerable. He had always been with Bella, and the thought of being alone, lost in the forest, was terrifying. He hugged his knees to his chest, wishing he had stayed close to her. But Bella was not far behind. She was calling for Cody, and though her voice was tinged with panic, there was a calmness in her actions. She would find him. She had to. Bella knew the forest like the back of her paw, and she would not rest until she found her son. The bond between them was unbreakable, and nothing in this vast, wild world could keep them apart for long. With each step, Bella's determination grew. She followed the trail, sniffing the air and listening carefully. And though the forest seemed endless, she knew that the love between a mother and her child was a force stronger than anything the wilderness could throw at them. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Bella's call reached Cody's ears. It was faint at first, but as the wind shifted, it grew clearer. His heart lifted. He recognized his mother's voice. He stood up, his legs trembling with relief, and began to move toward the sound. And then, just as the first stars began to appear in the sky, Bella and Cody found each other. Bella rushed to her son, enveloping him in a warm embrace. "Cody, you scared me," she murmured, her voice filled with relief and love. Cody clung to her, his fear melting away. "I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't mean to get lost." Bella smiled gently, brushing a tear from his cheek. "It's all right. We're together now." And as the two bears stood in the quiet forest, the night settling around them, they knew that no matter how vast or challenging the world could be, they would always have each other. Cody had ventured farther than he ever realized. The forest, which had once felt so familiar and safe, now seemed alien to him. The deeper he wandered, the more he noticed the changes, unfamiliar trees, strange sounds, and the feeling that he was being watched. He had been chasing a butterfly earlier, lost in his excitement, and now, hours later, the forest around him felt unrecognizable. His small bare paws, which were usually so adept at navigating the ground, were now tired and covered in dirt. He tried calling out for his mother, but the only response was the echo of his own voice bouncing back at him from the thick trees. As Cody wandered in search of a way back to Bella, his anxiety began to grow. He had never been this far from her before. Every rustling leaf and crackling twig made him jump. The woods, which had once seemed like a safe haven, now felt like a maze he couldn't escape. He began to walk faster, trying to find something that would guide him back home. But the deeper he went into the forest, the more disoriented he became. His legs were sore, and his mind was clouded with fear. In the midst of his panic, Cody didn't notice the road up ahead until it was too late. The sound of an engine reached his ears, but by the time he looked up, it was already too late. The car was too close. and despite his best attempt to dodge it, the vehicle slammed into him. The impact was sudden, jarring, and violent. Cody was knocked off his feet and sent sprawling across the road. His body hit the ground with a thud, and everything went black. The sounds of the forest, the rustling leaves, and the soft murmur of wind faded into nothingness. The car skidded to a halt, the tires screeching against the pavement. Inside the vehicle, a man's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his heart racing. He had never expected to find something like this while driving down this remote road. He had been on his way home from work, his mind preoccupied with the usual daily worries, when he saw something that made his stomach drop, a small creature lying motionless on the road. He threw the car into park and rushed out, his feet stumbling over the ground as he hurried to where the creature lay. The sight before him froze him in place for a moment, a small bear, no older than a cub, lying on its side, unmoving, his breath caught in his throat. "Oh no, what have I done?" he muttered under his breath, his hands shaking as he knelt beside Cody. He quickly checked for signs of life, his hands trembling as he gently prodded the small bear. He sighed in relief when he felt a faint pulse, but it was weak. The bear was still breathing, but it was clear that it had been badly hurt. There was blood on its fur, and its breathing was shallow. The man's heart sank, but he knew he couldn't just leave the animal here. He couldn't let it die. The man fumbled for his phone, dialing the emergency number. "Please, help," he pleaded when the operator picked up. "I've hit a bear. I think it's badly hurt. It's a cub. Please, hurry." The operator gave him instructions to keep the bear still and avoid moving it too much, assuring him that help was on the way. As he waited, the man remained by the bear's side, keeping a careful watch over it. He felt a pang of guilt. He had never meant to harm the creature, and now he was faced with the responsibility of saving its life. Minutes felt like hours as he sat beside the unconscious bear. He could hear the sound of his own breathing, steady but nervous. His mind raced with thoughts of how this could have happened. How had the bear ended up on the road? And where was its mother? He tried to imagine how terrified the little creature must have been. Lost and alone in the woods, the man couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sympathy for the animal. It was a wild creature, but in that moment, it felt like he was the one who could protect it. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. The man looked up and saw the flashing lights of an emergency vehicle coming around the bend. Relief washed over him as the paramedics arrived and jumped out of the vehicle. Rushing to Cody's side, the paramedics worked quickly and efficiently, stabilizing the young bear and preparing it for transport. They carefully loaded Cody into the back of their vehicle, and the man climbed into the front seat, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. As they sped toward the animal rescue center, the man stayed by Cody's side, his heart still racing but filled with hope. As they arrived at the center, a team of specialists was already waiting. The man watched anxiously as they took Cody inside, working to assess his injuries. The cub's small body was fragile, and the man could see that he had sustained some serious wounds. But he was hopeful. They were doing everything they could. The man stayed at the rescue center for hours, waiting for any news. His thoughts kept returning to the moment he had hit the bear. How he had been so certain the little creature was gone. He was glad he hadn't left, that he had stayed to help. He couldn't imagine what would have happened if he had just driven away. Finally, a doctor approached him with good news. "The bear is going to be okay," she said, a smile of relief on her face. "It's lucky you were there when you were. It had a concussion and some bruises. But we've got it under control. It's going to make a full recovery." The man felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had saved the little bear. And now, it had a chance to survive. But even as he stood there, grateful for the bear's recovery, his thoughts kept returning to the one question that lingered in the back of his mind: where was the bear's mother? And what would happen when they reunited? Little did he know, Bella, Cody's mother, was out there searching for her son. And the reunion between them would be just as miraculous. Jack, a kind-hearted man, had been driving along the winding road when he saw something that made his heart stop. A small bear cub, lying motionless on the side of the road, covered in dirt and blood. His first instinct was to stop and check on the animal. He could see the bear was barely breathing, and his mind immediately filled with concern. Jack wasn't sure how the cub ended up there, but he knew he couldn't just leave it. He carefully approached the bear, his hands shaking as he gently examined it. It was clear that the cub had been struck by a car, and the situation was serious. Jack's thoughts raced as he tried to figure out what to do. He couldn't just leave the bear here to die, especially after seeing how fragile and small it was. Without a second thought, he decided to take action. He carefully lifted Cody, the cub's small body warm against his chest, and placed him in the back of his truck. Jack drove quickly but cautiously to the nearest veterinary clinic. He knew time was of the essence, and every second mattered. The road seemed longer than usual, and every turn felt like it took him farther away from where he should be. But Jack's focus remained solely on Cody, whose breathing was still shallow but steady, indicating that he was still alive. When Jack finally reached the clinic, he rushed inside with Cody cradled in his arms. The staff at the clinic immediately noticed the urgency in Jack's voice as he explained the situation. The veterinarians quickly took over, assessing Cody's condition. They carefully placed him on an examination table, hooking him up to various monitors to keep track of his vitals. Jack stood back, watching anxiously, hoping that the bear cub would pull through. Over the next few hours, the veterinarians worked tirelessly to stabilize Cody. They cleaned his wounds, checked for internal injuries, and administered fluids to help him recover. The process was slow, but they were hopeful. Jack stayed in the waiting area, pacing nervously, his mind never leaving the small bear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the veterinarian came out to speak with him. "The cub is stable now," she said with a soft smile, her voice filled with relief. "It's going to take some time, but we're confident he'll make a full recovery. He's young and resilient." Jack breathed a sigh of relief, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. He had feared the worst, but now there was hope. The veterinarian continued, explaining that Cody would need rest and care for the next few weeks, as he had been severely injured, especially around his head and ribs. He wouldn't be able to move around much for a while, but once he regained his strength, he would be able to return to the wild. Jack spent the next few days visiting Cody at the clinic. Every time he saw the little cub, he felt a deep sense of responsibility for him. He would sit by the examination table, talking to Cody softly as if the bear could understand his words. He reassured him that he was safe, that he would be okay, and that he was no longer alone. As the days went by, Cody began to show signs of improvement. He started to stir in his bed, his eyes fluttering open for brief moments. At first, his movements were slow and weak, but with every passing day, he grew a little stronger. Jack watched with a sense of pride as the cub began to regain his energy. It was slow progress, but it was progress nonetheless. One morning, when Jack arrived at the clinic, he was greeted with even better news. Cody had started to eat on his own again, a small but significant milestone. The veterinarian explained that the cub's appetite had returned, and he was beginning to show interest in moving around, though he was still weak. Jack smiled, his heart swelling with happiness. He knew that this was just the beginning of Cody's recovery, but he was proud of how far the little bear had come. Every day, he would talk to Cody, telling him stories of the forest, of the world outside the clinic's walls, and of his mother, Bella, who was surely still out there looking for him. Despite the progress, there was still a long road ahead. Cody's legs were weak, and he still struggled to stand. Jack would often spend time with him, helping him practice moving his legs and standing. At first, it was a slow process. Cody's legs trembled, and his steps were shaky. But Jack remained patient, encouraging him with every little accomplishment. He could see the determination in Cody's eyes as he slowly regained strength, his small paws eventually supporting his weight. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when Cody seemed to lose hope, when the frustration of not being able to move as he once did seemed too much to bear. But Jack was always there to offer support, never giving up on the little cub. Each time Cody made progress, no matter how small, Jack celebrated it, letting the cub know how proud he was. One afternoon, as Jack was sitting beside Cody's bed, the cub let out a small whimper. Jack immediately turned to him, concern flooding his face, but as he looked into Cody's eyes, he realized that the bear wasn't in pain. Instead, Cody was trying to stand up on his own, his legs wobbly but determined. Jack's heart swelled with pride as he watched the bear slowly rise to his feet, his legs shaking under the weight. But he managed to stay upright for a few seconds before collapsing back onto the bed. "You're getting stronger, little one," Jack said softly, a smile tugging at his lips. "You'll be running through the forest before you know it." It was moments like this that made all the long hours worth it. Jack knew that he had done the right thing by helping Cody, and he had no intention of stopping until the cub was fully recovered. As the weeks went by, Cody's strength continued to grow. The veterinarian assured Jack that it was time for the cub to be released back into the wild. They had done everything they could to help him, and now it was time for Cody to return to his mother and his natural home. When the day finally came for Cody to leave the clinic, Jack felt a bittersweet feeling in his heart. He knew that the cub was strong enough to survive on his own again. But he couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness knowing that their time together was coming to an end. He took Cody to a secluded area of the forest, where he hoped the cub would find his way home to Bella. As Jack watched Cody disappear into the trees, he couldn't help but smile. The cub had come so far, and he was proud to have played a part in his recovery. Though their paths were now separate, Jack knew that Cody would always carry with him the strength and resilience that had helped him overcome the challenges of the wild. Bella had always been a watchful mother, but in the moment she realized Cody was missing, an overwhelming panic gripped her. Her sharp instincts told her something was wrong. She had only looked away for a moment. And now her son was nowhere in sight. She let out a deep, urgent call, her voice echoing through the trees. The forest, usually so full of life, now felt eerily silent. The only sounds were the rustling leaves and the distant chirping of birds. Bella sniffed the air, searching for Cody's scent. At first, it was faint, but she caught a trace of it, his familiar scent mixed with the damp earth. She followed it immediately, her powerful paws moving swiftly over the forest floor. As she followed Cody's scent, she came across a spot where the leaves were disturbed, as if something had run through in a hurry. Her heart pounded in her chest. Had Cody wandered too far? Had he been frightened by something? Bella had taught him the ways of the forest, how to stay safe, how to listen, but he was still young, still learning. She pressed forward, her nose close to the ground, determined to find her son. The scent led her deeper into the forest, past towering trees and thick undergrowth. The further she went, the more her worry grew. The forest could be unforgiving for a cub on his own. As she moved, she encountered a fast-flowing river. The water roared as it rushed over jagged rocks, its current strong and relentless. Cody's scent was faint here, but it lingered just enough for Bella to know he had come this way. She searched along the riverbank, her heart racing at the possibility that he had tried to cross. She waded into the cold water, the current pulling at her fur, but she pressed on. If Cody had fallen in, he would have been swept downstream. With renewed urgency, she climbed onto the opposite bank, shaking the water from her coat before continuing her search. The journey was exhausting, but Bella pushed forward, driven by an unbreakable bond. Her son needed her, and nothing, not rivers, not steep hills, not exhaustion, would stop her from finding him. Hours passed as she climbed through rocky terrain and wove through dense foliage. The sky darkened as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the forest. Hunger gnawed at her belly, but she ignored it. There was only one thing that mattered: Cody. As she crested a hill, she suddenly caught a stronger whiff of Cody's scent. Her ears perked up. He had been here, recently. With renewed hope, she quickened her pace, following the scent trail down the other side of the hill. But then, something else reached her nose, a smell she did not recognize. It was foreign, sharp, unnatural, a smell of metal and smoke. Bella hesitated, her instincts on high alert. The scent of humans. Fear coursed through her. She had always kept her distance from humans, knowing they were unpredictable. But now, Cody's scent was intertwined with theirs. Had they taken him? Was he hurt? Her body tensed as she followed the trail cautiously, her sharp eyes scanning the landscape. Soon, she reached the edge of the forest where the trees opened up to a narrow, paved road. The scent of humans was strongest here, mixed with Cody's own fading trail. Bella stepped onto the unfamiliar ground, sniffing the air, trying to understand what had happened. She saw disturbed dirt near the side of the road, as if something had fallen or been dragged. The realization hit her hard. Cody had been here, and something had taken him away. A deep growl rumbled in Bella's throat. Her cub was gone, but she would not stop searching. She moved along the road, tracking the faint remnants of Cody's scent, her heart pounding with determination. Even as darkness fell, she did not rest. The stars above guided her as she pressed forward, moving through unfamiliar territory. Her muscles ached. Her paws were sore, but she refused to stop. For Cody, she would never stop. Bella had been searching for days. Her body worn but her determination unshaken. She had crossed rivers, climbed hills, and followed every trace of Cody's scent she could find. The smell of humans still lingered in her nose, filling her with unease, but she would not stop until she found her son. Then, at last, she reached the edge of a human settlement. It was not like the dense, untamed forest she knew. Instead, there were strange structures, fences, and the sounds of unfamiliar creatures. But beneath it all, she caught the faintest, most precious scent, Cody. Her heart pounded. He was here. Cautiously, she approached the building, sniffing the air. The scent was strongest near a large fenced area. She let out a low, deep call, hoping her cub would hear her. Inside the veterinary center, Cody was resting. Though he had grown stronger each day, he still felt weak. He longed for the warmth of his mother, the safety of the forest. He had spent the last few weeks being cared for by kind humans, especially Jack, but he knew this was not where he belonged. Then, just as he was dozing off, something stirred deep inside him. A familiar voice, low, strong, comforting. His heart leapt. "Mama," he whimpered, lifting his head. Outside, Bella let out another call. Louder this time. Cody's ears perked up. There was no doubt. It was her. She had found him. Jack, who had been standing nearby, noticed Cody's sudden excitement. The little bear was trying to stand, his eyes wide with hope. Jack turned toward the window, and when he looked outside, he saw her, a massive bear standing at the edge of the center, eyes scanning the area. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He knew instantly that this was Cody's mother. For a moment, he hesitated. He had grown attached to the little cub, had watched over him and ensured his recovery. But Cody was never meant to stay here. He belonged in the wild. With his mother, Jack made his decision. He called the veterinarians and explained the situation. They were hesitant at first, worried for the safety of both the cub and those at the center. But Jack reassured them. Bella was not attacking. She was waiting, searching, hoping. Carefully, Jack carried Cody outside. The small bear wiggled in his arms, his excitement barely contained. As soon as they reached the open space, Jack set Cody down. For a moment, there was stillness. Bella watched, her body tense, her eyes locked onto her cub. Cody took a shaky step forward, then another, and then, with a burst of energy, he ran. "Mama!" Bella let out a deep, relieved huff as Cody pressed against her, rubbing his small body against her warm fur. She lowered her head, nuzzling him gently, reassuring him that she was here, that he was safe now. Jack watched the scene unfold, a lump forming in his throat. He had done what he could. But now, it was time for Cody to return to the life he was meant to have. Bella turned to Jack, her deep brown eyes meeting his. For a moment, she simply stared at him. Though she could not speak, there was an understanding between them. He had helped her son when she could not. Jack gave a small nod, as if silently telling her, "He's yours now, take him home." With one last glance at the humans who had saved him, Cody turned and followed Bella as she led him away. Jack watched as they disappeared into the forest, their figures blending into the trees. The wind rustled the leaves, the world settling into quiet once more. Bella and Cody were together again. where they belonged, wild, free, and safe.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.